right, we are in Lesson 31, Session 2 today in math on page 678, and we're continuing to learn how to use protractors to measure angles in math. So a protractor, again, is a tool used to measure angles. The protractor below shows that the measure of a right angle is 90 degrees. Kara draws the other angle below. What is the measure of Kara's angle, and how can you find out? Well, one thing we can do is that we learned prior is that we can consider the 90-degree angle, which would go more or less straight up from here. So we know that this is already larger than 90 degrees. So this is an obtuse angle. And right here, the second part says to picture it, and that's kind of what I was explaining. So if we know a 90-degree angle goes straight up, then this angle that we've been given has to be greater than 90. And if we continue the base ray as a straight line, we would then see that this would measure 180 degrees, and we have an acute angle left. So this, again, would make the angle an obtuse angle. Now the model, it shows exactly how you use a protractor in order to measure angles. So you have to line up the circle part of your protractor on the vertex of the angle, and the base ray or the bottom ray has to go along this line here if your protractor has the line, and it has to go through, I will say, the 180 on the right hand side, because that's what I see on my actual protractor. So once this is all lined up, you look at the inside measurements if the ray opens to the right, and we see that this measurement is in between the 120, 130 to make it about 125 degrees. Okay, I'm going to move on to page 679. So estimate the angle measure of Kara's angle. I'm going to say it's greater than 90 degrees. And then less than 180. And I can actually look back at that angle even without using the protractor below, and I see it's just it looks like it could be almost halfway. If I were to continue this straight line, it looks like it might be halfway between a right angle if I were to draw this out as another right angle here. So it looks like maybe halfway, and we know half of 90 is 45. So if I were to add 90 and 45, I'd get about 135. So I'm going to guess it's that angle measures 135 degrees. Why must you line up the protractor's center point with the vertex of the angle? Well, if we don't, we're not going to get an accurate measure. So number 3 says, suppose you line up one ray with either mark showing 10 or 170 instead of either mark showing 0 or 180. How would it change which mark the other ray points to? Well, if we already give the angle 10 degrees, it means that our angle it's going to be measured 10 degrees more, right? So the measurement of the angle will be off. So the measurement of the angle will be off 10 degrees. Line up either mark showing 0 or 180 degrees with one ray. Which mark does the other ray point to? Well, the other ray points to the measurement of the angle. Which number of degrees is the measure of the angle? Explain how you know. So looking back at that example, we actually see that this measurement is between the 20 and the 30, so this gives us a 125-degree angle. All right, after this lesson, you are going to, oh, I wrote that wrong, 125 degrees, not 12 degrees. After this lesson, you are going to be prepared to work on page 680 and 680 is for us to do together. I apologize for that. Okay, let's continue on with number 7. What is the measure in degrees of the angles shown? So it's important that when you're measuring angles, you can actually, look for this line right here to show what angle is being measured. Now, technically this would open on the right, but we only have one set of numbers, so we don't have to really worry about it, whether or not we look at an inside set or an outside set of numbers. So we are gonna say that this angle right here is between 240 and 230. So then the angle measurement is 235 degrees. And this one says, number 8, what is the measure of the angle shown? And we have to actually measure it. Now, my protractor is harder to use simply because it is not see-through. So what I have to do, and what some of you actually might have to do using your own, is I'm gonna have to make these lines longer. So I'm gonna line up my protractor and make these lines longer. And I'm gonna have them go off the paper here so that I will be able to accurately measure these angles. And I had to do this when I was a kid too, because they didn't have cool see-through protractors. All we had were wooden ones. So now look how big I've made this angle by making it longer so I can measure it easier. Now, one thing we know by looking at this is that this angle is less than 90 degrees because 90 would go straight up from that base ray. And it's probably just under half, so I'm thinking it's about a 30-degree angle. And another thing I know is that, well, it's an acute angle because it's less than 90, and also it opens to the left. Oops, sorry, I wrote that in cursive, left. So when it opens to the left, remember we have to use the outside numbers when we measure our angle. So I'm gonna put this right here on my vertex. I know I have my vertex because I can see through the hole. And I have to line up my line with the 0. And then I can see that the longer line that I wrote does indeed go through the 30 degrees. And remember, we're reading the outside angles there. Okay, so we have one more measurement here. What is the measure of the angle shown? And I'm gonna consider this my base ray, and I'm gonna consider it opening on the right-hand side of the ray. And I know this is an obtuse angle because it's simply so big. But again, I'm gonna have to lengthen. I have to make longer my lines like this and this because my protractor is not see-through. Okay, so now I can line up, sorry. Keep moving this off the camera here. So now I can line up my vertex. I see my vertex right there. And then the 180 has to go through because that's all I have on this side for me. I don't have a 0 as you would. And remember, we're open to the right, so we're gonna use the inside numbers to measure this angle. So as I go around and I come to this line over here and I make sure I look at that inside number, it is 150 degrees. And so that is the measurement of my angle. And now you're prepared to work on page 681 and 682 in your text.